We saw in the last video how we could access a content item in ArcGIS Online using the ArcGIS API for Python and return an item object. Now in this video we're going to look at the object item class properties that we can find information about in the documentation. So open up the item class properties from the item object folder. We have seen that the GIS class has a content property that opens up a content manager. And from this content manager, we can use the get method to return an item object. Now that item object has various class properties that are documented in the API documentation, such as can delete, content status, home page, and a few more that we see below here. So let's pop over to the documentation for the item object and take a look at some of these properties. Here we see the documentation for the item object. The item class represents an item in the GIS. If I start scrolling down, we can start seeing some methods, but we're interested in the properties. You can see here we can get the attachment size for an item object, if that item supports attachments. Can delete. This checks if the item can be removed or not. Sometimes an item cannot be deleted because other items are dependent upon it, such as a view layer, for example. Scroll down some more. We can return any comments. We can check the content status, which can be none, authoritative, or deprecated, with a new content status added for public authoritative. I like to call the properties that we can see in the documentation the item object class properties. And I want to make this distinction because there are other properties that we've seen so far, such as type and ID, that are not shown in this documentation, but are accessed from the JSON definition for the feature service. Let's scroll down. We're going to hit some more methods that we will take a look at some of these throughout the course. We can return the home page for an item. We can also return the metadata. And you should go through the documentation and read up on each item object property in your own time. If ratings are allowed and the item has been rated, you will have a rating property. Now some properties open up helper classes, such as sharing. So if I go down to, here's the property shared with. This has been deprecated since version 2.3 and is going to be removed, so I don't recommend using this property. And it has been replaced by the sharing property. This sharing property is a SharingManager object. And from the SharingManager object, you can then share your content item privately, publicly, to organization, and to groups. We'll head back to our Python script. We first access ArcGIS Online through the GIS class. And we'll assign that to a variable called AGOL. We're going to use our GIS object and the content property for the content manager and the get method and supply in our feature service item ID, which I'm going to copy and paste in from my notepad. The get method will return an item object and will assign the calling of the get method to a variable called item. So our item variable here represents an item object that is our feature service. I'm going to print some of the property to screen that we saw in the documentation. First of all, can I delete this item if I wanted to? So I'm calling item.canDelete. I'm going to check the content status. We haven't set one, so I'm expecting that to be none. We'll print the home page URL. I'm going to access the item SharingManager and see how this item is shared with the shared with property from the SharingManager. I'll print the item.contents. That'll be a list, and it should be an empty list because we have no comments yet on our item. We'll also print the current rating if there is one. We're going to take a look at views way further in this course. The item object for a feature service has a view manager that will allow us to list any view layers created from the feature service. And we can access a list method from the view manager to print those views to screen. The goal here is really just to show you a whole host of properties available in the documentation for the item object. I'll run the script and we'll take a look at the output. We first printed the item object can delete property, and we will return true, indicating that we can delete this item without any hindrance. For the content status, nothing was returned, so we've no content status set on this item object. We printed the homepage URL. If I copied and pasted this into my browser, it would take me to the item page for the feature service. We then accessed the sharing property, which is a SharingManager object, and printed the shared with property from that SharingManager. We can see it is not shared with any groups, and it is only shared privately at the moment. The comments returned an empty list. We have no rating, and no views have been set on this feature service as of yet. That was just a brief introduction into the item object class properties that you can find more information about in the documentation. And up the top of this script, you can find the links to all the properties accessed in this video. In the next video, we're going to take a look at the JSON properties that are hidden in a feature service item object. Make sure to continue on to the next video in this series, and also make sure to subscribe. Take care.